Bitcoin for 100 million because Bitcoin just hit $100 million in price. Did you get yours? Yeah, okay. Happy April Fool's Day, right? Haha. The thing is, there may come a time when somebody says that and it's not an April Fool's Day joke. And what will that mean when it happens? When the value of a Satoshi is $1. Right now, you still get something like 1,400 Satoshis per dollar. Okay. About during the first huge rush of excitement during around 2016, 2017, when there was that run up to $20,000 more or less, you could still get like a couple 100,000 or whatever it was Satoshis for $1. Before that, it was in the previous pump before 2016, you could get like a couple million, even tens of millions for $1, right? At the earliest days, when it was worth practically nothing, you could get almost 100 million Satoshis for $1, right? Just pay the fee of the electricity, and the network fee, which was practically nothing in the very earliest days. And we were buying and selling Bitcoin for literally for nothing, or for just tiny little computer parts or some content to publish or whatever it was, ridiculously low amounts of value. And now one is well beyond the reach of most people. Think about that. 15 years ago, I couldn't get rid of this stuff. Right? Never mind what happened to my Bitcoin mining rig. It's a well-known story. A sad, well-known story. It met its fate. Its fateful end at the hands of some very unpleasant people. But yeah, back then, like 2009, 2010, most people would just look at you sideways if you told them, I've got this thing called Bitcoin. They had no clue. Forget that they hadn't read about it, but even if I would sit with them for, a while, a conversation, regardless of how long it was, and explain it to them, which the conversation back then, by the way, was very different than the very sort of polished form of that conversation that people tend to have today, and the buzzwords and buzz phrases people tend to say today. There's a lot of things people say today about Bitcoin that we didn't say in the earliest days. Why? Because those buzz phrases had not been polished yet. We said those things in different ways, but we certainly didn't say those things the way that they've been said now for the past 7-8 years. Okay, the first 7-8 years, the language was evolving at an incredibly rapid rate in terms of how people speak about this asset. And for example, well, I don't want to dig too deep into that, but let's just say the language is evolving very rapidly in terms of how people refer to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's already been fairly well established for Bitcoin and for a bunch of other forks of it and for some other altcoins, but it still is evolving, obviously, and you have new things being created. For example, ordinals or runes, right? Things like that. But there are other aspects of it too. For example, the way people refer to its immutability or its censorship proof, things like that. There were really different ways of speaking about that. Now, why does it matter? It doesn't really. It's just to show you or to remind you that as the protocol ages in time, it certainly has evolved and continues. And that's interesting. It speaks well about the long-term prospects of the survivability of the asset over time. Why? Well, because when a thing is introduced into the culture, and it doesn't just stay stagnant, but rather it evolves with the culture in terms of how people refer to it, how they speak of it, how they use it, how they develop it, and all these things. It shows that it has a living and thriving culture, not just for its necessarily original purpose, but also for its developing purpose, which is a key part of its vitality. Right? Just imagine if it had been introduced 13 years ago and nothing had been done to change it, ever. No segregated witness, no ordinals, no runes, nothing, none of that stuff. Right? No hardware wallets, no ASICs, none of that stuff. It would be a very different protocol. It would have very different value right now. Right? If nobody had ever forked it even, it wouldn't have the same value. Now, you could argue, well, if it was the only one, it'd be worth more because more people would be into it. No, if it was the only one, I argue it would not be worth anywhere near as much as it is. And the proof is, when it first began, obviously it was worth a lot less. But it was only once there were forks and alts that it began to actually take off in value. Right? It wasn't really before that it started to spring up. And the simple reason for that is competition is good. Because if you're the only option in a new market and there's no interest in making more of it, then that demonstrates a lack of interest on the part of the consumers. And that would have been basically the death knell, or just the thing that would have made Bitcoin just, this curious hobbyist thing that's not really interesting to people. They don't really have any interest in it. They don't want it. However, that isn't what happened, obviously, right? The software was forked and alts were created, different versions entirely, different cryptos, like Ethereum, whatever. You can hate it all you want. I'm just saying, Ethereum did in fact help launch a significant portion of the interest in crypto, as did many other coins, by the way, but that one also. And all of these things, the more coins there are, yes, you can say, it's taking liquidity away from Bitcoin. Okay, temporarily, people might be putting their liquidity into some other things. But for the most part, what are they planning to do with that liquidity? They're planning to cash it out and buy the underlying Bitcoin asset, right? Or the competitor Bitcoin asset, right? For the most part. Sure, there's people who are going to be maxis of whatever other protocol, so they may not want to cash out and put their money into Bitcoin or all their money into Bitcoin. But by and large, people who are in the crypto game, typically, they want to have some kind of Bitcoin stack. So they will put some portion, if not the majority or all of it, into the orange coin. So just remember that. Why is it important? Well, none of this is really important unless you're into crypto. And if you're not, well, at some point you probably will be. It's gonna be, I'm guessing, not a long time. And so whether really you like it or not, it's going to have some impact on your life if it hasn't already. And yeah, you can send this video to a friend who has never had anything to do with it. And you'll see, it still probably will be very relevant to them. Maybe they'll just have a laugh at first, think you're joking. What are you wasting my time with this crypto nonsense for? It's a scam and all this other stuff. And then some time will pass, and they'll probably have a different opinion, because it is increasingly important, and it will at some point probably be inevitable that most people have to interact with it in some way, shape, or form. Anyway, that's it. Happy Bitcoining.